Hello, welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. I'm Courtney Brain. Something Positive for Positive People is a 501c3 nonprofit organization supporting people who are navigating herpes stigma. We do research. In fact, we have a survey that's coming up. We're actually raising money for this. Herpes Awareness Day, October 13th. The theme is taking steps to a cure. And so, what we're looking to do is to get participation in the fundraising event that we're going to have. It'll be an online panel discussion. We're going to do a documentary showing of the No Shame in This Game film. And all we're doing is just asking for people to register by making any contribution they want to make. And then we'll send you the link to the event. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. or it's 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. All right. So documentary showing, panel discussion, and I'm looking for a couple other things to happen as well. But if anyone wants to just kind of share what they think a cure for herpes would do for them, you can just email me, let me know so that I can have it in writing. I prefer people to show up and verbalize this because the power of showing versus me telling is tremendous. So if you're someone who is living with herpes, you know someone who's living with herpes, and you're willing to share what would a cure do for you or for them, or what would it do for STI prevention, I would love to hear from you. All right. Now, this is on the events tab. Herpes Awareness Day is Sunday, October 13th, and we're going to have a virtual event from 10 or 10:30 to 2 to 2:30, and this is Eastern Standard Time. All right. Anybody can join. Everybody's welcome. We're just collecting donations, and the funds that are raised are going toward our next survey. I have a team of people that I'm working with, and I want to make sure to pay them. Everybody's volunteering their time, but I want to be able to pay them for what they're contributing to this. Right now, if you want access to the 2024 herpes survey data, that's put into a presentation from the Herpes Stigma Conference. The first one, that's Something Positive for Positive People did. You can go to spfpp.org/conferences in order to access that. All right. Last thing we have is the Safe Sex Expo. This is on September 29th. If you are located in NYC, if you're in New York City the weekend of September 29th, you can come out for a day of workshops. This day of workshops is going to be hosted by some popular sexuality educators. You can check that out on the events tab of the website also to see what the details are. Unfortunately, social media does not like the name Safe Sex Expo and anything where I'm promoting an event. So I got to be real sneaky and subtle about it. So I'm trying to figure out ways to dance around that. But if you see the post, if you see the event, I invite you to just share it. People sharing this podcast and this resource has really come in clutch. I'll be speaking on a panel at in national, it's the AIDS Awareness Day. Wow, that's not what it is. December 10th, whatever that is, World AIDS Day, I think that's it, on a panel because someone that was making the decisions listens to this podcast. And if you're listening now, thank you. And my name got brought up as somebody to talk about herpes, which people don't talk about herpes, especially in relation to AIDS and HIV. So I'm excited to be invited onto that panel. And I look forward to more of these opportunities that are presenting themselves. And the more information that you all are willing to share, the more you're willing to come on this podcast, the more you're willing to talk about your experiences with me, the better. All right. So, closing it out, I would love to see more people come to the Safe Sex Expo. We've got 20 people signed up. Right now, I saw one name that looks like it could be a guy. So, a lot of our sponsors that we're reaching out to are going to be offering giveaway opportunities for women's pleasure items. The Safe Sex Expo is really intersecting STI prevention as well as sexual health communication, as well as pleasure communication all in one so that people can learn these things that, as we kind of talked about at the end of our last podcast episode, things that the non-monogamy and kink community have kind of normalized within their spaces. And just we want to make these more psychologically accessible to people who might not fall under those categories. I met with some organizations that I was connected with through the New York Department of Health and talked to them about this. It was like, hey, like when I was getting tested and treated and getting condoms and lube. I went to LGBT, HIV related organizations with no idea that they did free testing, no idea that they offered free condoms. And this is me as a cisgendered, heterosexual Black man finding these spaces because of my immersion into environments that normally you wouldn't see me in. So it's important to me to make these kinds of things psychologically accessible. And I think that we're able to do that with the Safe Sex Expo. Now we get into the podcast episode. Hello, I'm back with Kate. Kate, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to this conversation very much.
I am too. So I gotta tell you, someone who listened. So we got some feedback. We're going straight into part two. So you and I did that recording in July, or was it June?
Oh my gosh.
It was a long time
I
ago.
think it was the end of June.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
we did the recording for non-monogamous conversations. Monogamous people need to have part one in June. And here we are, it's August 24th, and we're coming back. I just posted the episode last week because I started chunking my interviews and then just releasing weekly. And this has been helpful for me, except for sometimes I don't remember what we talked about. So I had to listen to the podcast again as I was posting because I was like, oh yeah, I remember the title. And I started talking about the topic. But when I listened to it, the first like 40 minutes of it, we were talking about the relationship that you were in that that you did get herpes from. And how that turned out. So I got feedback on that more than anything else. And someone was like, yeah, Courtney, this was a misleading title. You should have called this Baby Reindeer. And I just started laughing.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is Baby Reindeer Part 1. I listened to it too, and I was like, oh dang, if people were really like, they were probably like, what the hell?
I got more is she okay than
Oh yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
But no, as we were transitioning into like the main point of that conversation, what I think people can get out of that too is just seeing like how um exploring things that they may not have been able to talk about allows for them to identify more instances and inconsistencies in a relationship that can help them with leaving earlier. So I think that there was a lot of value in that conversation. And then calling that part one of the non-monogamous conversations that monogamous people need to have, I think it's a decent setup because anyone who heard that and they're like, wait, where's this part, is going to like hopefully come to the part two without being mad at me, because it wasn't really like a bait and switch. I mean, we got into it like in the intro, I talked about it, and then in the outro, we were getting to it, but we just didn't really get to start really getting into that conversation. And so I want to just kind of pick up where we left off, if we can, and just like make up for the time in part one that we didn't get to talk about this. You said that when you got into non-monogamy, you mentioned that you weren't really doing it for the right reasons. Is that it, where we started at or where we were?
Yeah, and I actually went and I listened to the podcast as well and was like, wow, the sound of my own voice is very grating. But like but that's just one of those things, when you hear yourself back. But I was kind of thinking about like I think that all of that lead up of this horrible relationship that I had, I got herpes and everything, actually was the catalyst to go into non-monogamy. And again, like I will fully admit it wasn't for the right reasons. It was because I was hurt. I came out of that awful relationship, he was just like, "Oh yeah, if you listened last week, oh yeah, you were right. I actually do have a child, all of this." And so I said, bye, we're done, like cut it all off. And I also mentioned that I wasn't good at being single. Like I wasn't good at being single. And so I kind of just launched into trying to find somebody to fill the void. Um and I guess I should just say I'm not good at being single because there wasn't really any downtime between this non-monogamous relationship and the monogamous relationship I have now. But I got on OkCupid and was like, I don't want to be alone. Like, here's this person, like I'm just coming off of this person telling me that I should go out and date, but I shouldn't go out and date. And it was very confusing. And I was still extremely young. I was young, I was hurt. I was living in this place where I was just like, I feel like I have no connections because it was rural and all of the people my age had already been married for at least 2 or 3 years. So I was just like, this is not a world that I'm used to. So I got on OkCupid, and back in the day, like 10+ years ago, OkCupid, unbeknownst to me, because I was just trying online dating, was kind of a hotspot for like non-monogamous people. And apparently that was pretty well known. I didn't know, but I went on, that's kind of how I would end up finding people to go on dates with. And I met this person who we started talking just on the app, and then we met for coffee, and he just right I mean, he sat me down and was like, just so you know, he referred to himself as polyamorous. He was just like, I'm poly. That is part of my deal. Like, take it or leave it. And I was just like, okay, can you explain to me what that is? And so he was just like, listen, I forget how he explained it himself, and I don't want to even like try to paraphrase, but he was just very blunt about it. And at that point in my life, I read that as, okay, well then I can be in I can do this thing, and then like maybe, sorry, the cat just walked across the keyboard. But I can also keep exploring my options. So I know that I didn't enter into it with the right mindset, but at the same time, kind of coming off of this really manipulative, pretty controlling relationship, I also had this open mind that was just basically like, um, can I curse on this podcast? I was just like, fuck it. Let's just whatever, because that's, you know, is what it is. So, kind of just took off from there. But I think the frankness of just our first date or our first meeting was like, we're gonna go get coffee. And it wasn't even, I think it was like maybe 15-20 minutes of pleasantries. And then he was like, listen, before we go any further, before you finish your coffee, you need to know what I'm about. And I was like, okay. And that was super refreshing, because it was like all the vanilla relationships I had had were just this song and dance of like, oh, teehee, like we're gonna kind of, nobody had ever been like that upfront with what they were about and their expectations before, and neither had I. So I just was like, okay, let's do it.
All right, I muted myself and I took notes. I did not want to interrupt you because you was flowing. All right. So what I wrote down, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions out of the time that you were talking. So I can go back chronologically, right? And the first thing that I want to talk about is you saying you were not good at being single. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What does that mean to not be good at being single?
Um, I think it kind of started, gosh, not good at being single. I think it was just, I hated being alone with my thoughts. I hated just like not having a distraction from myself, which is unfortunate because now that I've gotten older and kind of dealt with some of that stuff, I actually think myself is a cool person to be around, and I very much value my time by myself. I value this time right now where my daughter gets to go have an amazing time with her dad on Saturdays, and I just kind of get to be with myself and process thoughts. But I think I found I took a lot of my self-worth being with somebody else. And I didn't really take the time that I needed to work through that. And honestly, like part of being in this very short-lived non-monogamous uh uh partnership um helped me for like kind of forced me to deal with some of that stuff. So
Mm, okay, so when you say being in the non-monogamous relationship kind of force you into it, I imagine it's because the being in non-monogamous dating or relationships kind of gave you some safety and security that you had with being single, but it also gave you something, some sense of security, to be able to be alone with yourself, right? Like that's what I'm kind of getting at, but I want you to use your own words, because what I'm hearing is being non-monogamous kind of gave you something that being single allowed, but being in a historically monogamous relationship wouldn't have allowed you to be able to have. Can you speak more to that?
that's honestly exactly right. And I want to preface this by saying that I respect and love and appreciate the non-monogamous kink BDSM community so much that I removed myself from it because I knew that I was misusing it. And it just wasn't a lifestyle that I felt like I could be a part of properly. And um it taught me so much about myself, but it definitely was this exactly how you said. It afforded me in my brain, okay, well, I have the same luxury of being able to quote, like, date around while also having this safety net of this person who that's their lifestyle. It's been their lifestyle for years, decades. Um, and they were okay with it. But it also was, I think, because the expectation was like, well, they're okay with it because we're already a partner. So it's like my partnership with other people wasn't going to affect, in their mind, wasn't going to affect my partnership with them. But in my mind, it was kind of the opposite. I think I unfortunately just treated this person more as like a safety net, um, other than a real, I mean, and I care a lot about this person still. We still keep in touch. And that's kind of this is like kind of a tangent, but like one thing that non-monogamy taught me in a very short time is that relationships can change, and that's okay. Um, Communicating that though is super important because if you never talk about the change, then it just festers and becomes something like
Resentment.
yeah, it becomes resentful and like dark and kind of ugly, and it goes to an ugly place. And I mentioned on the last podcast, I was a cut and runner, and like this is the first person where I actually worked out the change. And I've used that in my current relationship to kind of help keep the relationship going forward. Cause it's like, um, love is a verb, it's an active thing. It's something that we do, but it's something that we have to constantly work on too.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I wrote down things that you said. So I don't know what it is. Like this conversation's speaking to me mostly, like, just to be, clear about my intentions with this. I think it's because how I've recognized like a shift in treatment in kink non-monogamy spaces it's changed since being in a monogamous relationship with my partner. She and I've talked about it, and we both recognize this, that like there's kind of this if I can't fuck you, I won't fuck with you type thing. Like I've noticed it with some opportunities of like presenting workshops like we always have at sex related events or play parties, and just kind of like being lost in the communication, or people just kind of like not following up anymore. And it was, when that happened, and it happened like a few times, that's when I was just kind of like, like this is strange. And I'm like, well, what I've gotten out of these spaces, there was a little bit of grief, I would say, because there's this attachment to the spaces, right? Like I've found so much of myself in these spaces, and it taught me like language. It taught me communication skills. It taught me, how to ask for what you need, how to identify what you need without defaulting to, oh, you can't give me what I want, so I'm gonna go find someone else who can. Because the hard thing to do is to communicate that. And I learned through uh, being in these spaces, being in these settings and relationships, that it's safe, it's okay for you to ask for what it is that you need. And then now, I was the one who initiated a conversation about monogamy. Like I wasn't the one who told my partner, like, hey, we're monogamous now. Because I've heard of people even doing that. Like where someone's just like, no, we're monogamous. You're going to stop doing what you're doing. And I really don't believe in that. So I was the one who said to my girlfriend, I was like, hey, so this was so hard for me to communicate, because I come from a background of like, well, if they're gonna do this, then you need to do it too. Or like, I'm not about to sit here and look like insert derogatory term, right? But I was the one who, I was just like, man, I like this person, and I'm thinking about her a lot, and I like spending time with her, and uh I really just was like, it's not, first off, it's not fair to me, to deprive myself of the overall depth of the relationship, but also it wasn't fair to other people that I was seeing, for me to, be with them and being like, man, I can't wait to get back to my person. Like this is who I'm really enjoying spending time with. I'm enjoying what we have, and it's been able to get deeper. And like I tell people, because I think a lot of people are afraid of getting their heart broken as well. And it's easier to sort of minimize the damage when you have multiple people who have like pieces of you and parts of you. But to be able to show all of yourself to a person and then some, right? Like even if you're dating multiple people, maybe not everyone can see all of you. There might be, some conflicting beliefs or values that you just kind of keep hidden, or you avoid letting them come up. And then to be in a relationship where like challenging things come up, and it's like there's still the acceptance, right? That felt good to me. And so I was the one who was like, hey, I'm gonna stop seeing other people, and I'm not telling you what to do, but like in my heart, I'm like, my heart's racing. I'm like, damn, what does she want? What if she doesn't feel the way I feel? Or what if she wants to see other people? But that vulnerability is something that I have not seen representation of, at least like on social media, in monogamous relationships or in the dating world, right? Like people who are non-monogamous who are dating are actually doing a lot of education to people about relationships. It's not about that relationship itself, but also, as we're going off into whatever relationships that we choose to be in. So I thought it was just important that I kind of share what my intention is with this conversation, because while this isn't necessarily about herpes itself, it speaks to something that's more valuable than the herpes, because we get so caught up in, oh, well, I have herpes, this person isn't compatible. But there are all these other areas of expansion and exploration for relationships, how we do relationships, that can just be unnoticed because we're so locked into the herpes, right? So that was just like kind of my 2 cents. And do you have anything to add or any questions about anything before I move on to my next question for you?
No, it's funny because I'm hearing you talk, and it's like all of the feelings that you have about your current partner, and like that, like, hey, I'm gonna share this with you. and I'm going to be cool about it because it's not my place to tell you how to feel, what to do. But on the inside, you're just like, oh, please, like I hope we feel the same way. Like that's actually, I had that same feeling when I met my current partner. But then it meant that I had to, because when I met my current partner, I was very upfront because I had been immersed in this community for about like 6 months at that point. Um, and I did what my partner did, like right off the bat, like even before we met face to face. I was just like, you gotta know this is what I'm doing. I have a partner, like I am practicing ethical non-monogamy. Like just know that if we meet, this is the situation. And my partner was like, okay, which I was like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah, you're like,
Like
wait, you're cool with that? Okay,
you're
I'm
okay
more
with that?
attracted.
Yeah,
I'm more
yeah. I was
attracted to you
like,
now. Wait a
okie
minute.
dokie. Yeah, he was like, listen, that is not my lifestyle, but like I'm interested enough in you that I feel, let's meet. And I feel like
Wait a minute. Can you say that one more time? Can you just say that again? I think that that needs to be reiterated. This person was more interested in
he
you.
was more interested, he was interested enough in me that he was like, okay, fine, like let's meet. And I think it was at that moment because this was somebody that I was like, oh, okay, like this could really, because we talked for a while online, but I had just put it out there like before, and we talked for like a long time because he was traveling before we met. It had been like a month of us talking. And I was upfront with my current partner, like, I'm really interested in this person. I'd like to go. And he was like, have the best time.
Can I
Um,
ask you, what do
yeah.
you think things would have been like if, what if your partner wasn't like that? Would you have been willing to stop seeing this new person if the partner that you were with at the time were like, "Ooh, I don't like this," right? Like, how do you think you would have felt? Because I think that people come across that too.
I would have had a real hard time with it. And again, I think it's because I was enjoying, like, I wasn't going around and like dating a ton of people, but like if somebody really interesting came up that I wanted to get to know and that I really wanted to pursue, then I think I would have had a really hard time. Um, if my like we'll just use the term, like if my primary partner at the time in quotes had been like, no, I don't feel good about that,
Okay. Okay.
we would have had to have a conversation,
Yeah, and
especially because at the time, like to be perfectly honest, like he was seeing people. It was just I was being very picky. um he was not as picky with the people that he saw, which was fine. Like it didn't, yeah, it was something that I knew that he needed. But again, I also was kind of keeping him a little bit at arm's length. So I don't think that my emotional attachment to him didn't run deep enough to be like, well, no, I'm not going to see this person.
yeah, and this goes back to the being non-monogamous was sort of the same as being single, but it was sort of the same as being in a relationship
Yep.
because you had the security of, and I think that what that might do too is make you less thirsty or make you less needy for other
Yeah.
partnerships to where you can be picky. You're like, okay, I have someone in my circle who sets the bar this high. So the only people that I'm going to entertain are people who exceed those standards, right?
Right.
And I think there's a huge difference between standards and expectations. Standards are
Yeah.
what align internally, expectations are what align externally. This is how I use standards versus expectations. So, you being able to do that, you being able to meet, you were able to explore and really get to know this person, partially because you weren't thirsty for the physical connection. And you also had already experienced so much growth through the non monogamous relationship that you had because you were able to learn more about yourself, date other people, get the communication. And you even took that communication of being direct and upfront into this new relationship that you're now in. You're married, you have a kid together, right? And so while y'all started as non-monogamous, you really got to know this person because you said he was traveling and you made the decision that you wanted to only be with this person because what?
I feel like the more I got to know this person, the more I realized that our values, our lifestyles, our drives, and everything just were way more aligned than anybody that I had met in a long time. And we both, I mean, it's funny because it's like we're talking about communication and all of that. And I feel like we both kind of entered into this, like he and I entered into our current relationship with me being like, well, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to tell you this. I'm going to be upfront about this. I'm going to be upfront about this. Um, but the more we got to know each other, the more I was like, wow, our backgrounds are really similar. Um, our career goals are really similar. We have totally different career paths, but like what we want for ourselves are really, really similar. The way that we view like family and everything, there were just so many more things that aligned. And I also, um, I mentioned, last podcast that like he and I are both cats, right? Like we're the type of people that like to be near each other a lot of the time, but we don't necessarily need to talk. We're both introverts in very extroverted jobs. And we know that like our social batteries run real low at the end of the day. I mean, add a kid onto that too, and it can be, challenging. But I just kind of saw that like there was just way more of like things that I cared really deeply about and could see like compatibility wise that lined up with this person than with my um I will just call him my poly partner at that
Okay.
point.
Yeah, I guess this is a really good place to bring up herpes. Like, how did that herpes disclosure go? What was disclosing like for you leading up to this last time that you had to do it? And then let's hear how this disclosure went.
So, prior, I guess, my poly partner was the first person that I disclosed to. It was the first person that I had to disclose to because I figured it was, and I think it made it was hard. It was so hard. I didn't eat. I planned it out in my head like how I was going to tell him. We had had this date that was like lined up and like I don't think I ate for like 2 days leading up to the because I just was so nervous and was just like, "Oh my God, like what if this is just like a turn off?" And it's not like again, we weren't it's not like it was anything serious leading up to that. And I kind of had in the back of my mind, like, dang, this guy was so frank about the fact that he was polyamorous, the fact that he was part of the BDSM community and the kink community. And he was really frank about that. And he was really great about explaining. And like at that point, I had spent so much time going onto forums trying to find like the medical guidelines and like not calling it herpes, being like, well, I have HSV too, and here is what it is, and all that. And I see you laughing because I feel like we've all done that because it's like in a way, that's like that shield because it's like, oh, well, it's super prevalent. And like if I don't name it herpes, then it sounds a little less scary. But I remember calling him. It's funny because it's like I can still remember this phone call. And I just was like, hey, you know what? I'm really looking forward to our date. But before we go on that, like I just and I also left the door. Well, I'll back up. I like keep interrupting my own self, but told him I'm like, I'm really looking forward to this, but before we go, like there's something about me that you need to know. Like you need to know that I have HSV2. That is the herpes virus. Like here is the statistics on it, and all of this is like, I also have HSV1. I haven't had any outbreaks, but just so you know, here's what it is. And I just wanted to put that out there in case this changes your mind about meeting or anything. And I'm also super happy to just talk to you about this in person when we meet. But I wanted to let you know ahead of time so you had time to process it. And feel free to ask me any questions because I've done a lot of research on it. Obviously, I live with it. Like, just I'm an open book, or I said I'm an open book, and I was just like, well, if I say I'm an open book, I guess I just gotta be, right? So, I mean, in terms of standards and expectations that we were talking about, I mean, he set the bar so high because he just was very, I kept talking and talking, and he just was like, Kate, hey, that's okay. It's really not that big a deal. Is like the more important thing is I'm really glad that you know your status. Is like, and then he explained to me, I, I had the same thought. And he was like, because a lot of STI testings don't test for herpes. A lot of those panels don't. And the only way that people find out is when they end up with an outbreak. So he was like, this actually is a really good thing because you know your triggers, and like we can work around that. And he went on to explain how important it is in the poly and kink community to know your status, and that people navigate STIs because it's a if you're having sex, they're around. Doesn't matter if you're in a vanilla relationship, a poly relationship, if you're kink, if you're not, like STIs exist. We like to pretend in the vanilla community that they don't, or like we just, I don't know, I'm not even that they don't, but we just don't talk about it, you know? And so to have somebody just be like, okay, I get tested for STIs he said he does it every 6 months regardless, or if he has a new partner. That was the it. And he was like, that's just kind of common practice. He was like, I've done that. I've been in relationships where I'm monogamous still every 6 months, new partner, test before, test after. And that's how we're able to do this thing healthily. And the thing is, we talk about it. So I think that being my first instance of disclosure, like I would love to be like, yeah, then after that I was a pro. I was not. Like it's always hard. It's always hard, especially like, but I think having especially, but also I had this as my first experience disclosing. Um yeah, it kind of it set the bar high. It set the bar high.
Yeah, and this being one of those normal things to him, right? Like, not to say that every non-monogamous person talks about sexual health or every non-monogamous person receives a disclosure so well. The key component here is we're seeing that this is someone who, because of their experience in relationships and in the kink world, they're able to have the communication skills necessary to bring to you and for you to be like, oh, okay, this is how things can be, because you yourself haven't experienced that level of transparency or communication between yourself and any of the other partners that you had, or even the intentionality and the directness from other partners based on what we're hearing here. Is that right? Like, you haven't had anyone be that upfront with you? Okay. Oh, I saw you shaking your head. No, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything.
Sorry. No, no, I
Okay.
hadn't. This was the first time.
Okay. Other things that I had questions wise, right? I think that the bluntness early on, the way that you said how blunt and direct he was, and then you had kind of his like fuck it mindset, which I see the kid. Oh, you got headphones in. Woo! Hi. I looked away from the screen. I looked back and then I saw the head.
Hi, babe. Yeah, no, I got
Hello.
headphones. Don't worry.
Well, we'll be wrapping up soon. I just have like these questions, and then I didn't even realize how
Absolutely.
much time flew by. But yeah, you mentioned like the bluntness, kind of the way that I heard it was excusing accountability because of the oh well, you know what, fuck it attitude, and you know that you didn't go into this with the right mindset because it kind of excused some accountability on your end, but there was still accountability. Can I get you to speak to some of those phrases that you said?
Yeah, so like which one in particular do you want to start?
Yeah, so I wrote in like being his bluntness, kind of excusing your accountability. So it's almost like what I heard in that was he was like, "Hey, I'm non-monogamous," and you were like, "Oh, well, fuck it. Like you're not asking me for commitment. I kind of get to be single still, and I still get to have this relationship." And you mentioned not going into it with the right mindset. Kind of felt like it tied into the "okay, fuck it" attitude. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah. So I think at that point I kind of was just like, well, you know, I felt like I had nothing to lose. Um, because here's somebody who I guess I kind of confused like non-monogamy with like commitment.
Ooh,
Yeah.
say more.
Yeah. So like I did not realize that people that truly practice that lifestyle are very committed to their people. And it can be different. I mean, some people aren't, but some people are. And he was somebody who was very, very like passionate about the people in his life and his partners. And like to me, I conflated it with like, well, this isn't a commitment thing. So like I still, oh gosh, this is gonna sound so terrible, but it's like this is okay for now, but I'm gonna keep looking for the person that really aligns with like my my lifestyle, my values. And I mean, well, not I don't want to say even like lifestyle, but just like more aligns with like my values and what I'm looking for long term.
Yeah. So would you say that I know you going into dating again, you weren't looking for a non-monogamous relationship, but when you came across it, you liked that person more than you liked the idea of having to be monogamous, and you were able to learn something because you challenged that belief, you challenged the I guess compulsion of just entering into monogamous relationships, especially as someone who wasn't good at being single.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not also not like I wasn't like attracted to this person. I was attracted to them too. Like I was attracted to their bluntness and just like that I guess that was just like really refreshing because after coming off of this relationship with somebody who would speak basically in riddles all the time. Oh, sorry, one second.
Oh, no, 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 okay. That sounded like a kid fail. Well, while we're here, I want to go ahead and plug the Safe Sex Expo. So while we're not going to be going into, specifically monogamy, non-monogamy conversations, this is a place where those kinds of conversations can come up. This is for the kink curious. If you're located in New York City, I encourage you to come through. We're going to be at Lower East Side Manhattan. You'll receive the address when you register, or not when you register, but I'll send out an email just giving you updates, making sure that you know where the venue is, give you details on that, what to bring, how to show up, more information about the individual workshops beforehand. But it's a day of interactive and fun workshops with sexuality educators where you're going to be able to learn and practice some communication skills, kind of like what we're hearing from this first person that Kate dated after her terrible relation, the baby reindeer relationship. All right. Looks like it was enough time. You ready to come back? Look at me
Yeah,
plugging in
yeah.
commercials.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. All
All
good.
right.
Yeah.
So you were at This Is Okay for Now while you were able to look for someone who does like more so.
Yeah. 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 So that was kind of, I don't know, that's kind of what I used that relationship for. Um, but like in the time, like this was somebody that was so he required being so blunt about just like, and I say blunt, but it was really just like, I'm just communicating what I need and what I do. And like it was good practice for me. It ended up being really good practice for me because we had to be very open.
Yeah. So would you call this person emotionally available?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Despite their number of other relationships, you still received a good amount of emotional availability from this person. Is that right?
Yes. And that was one of the things is he would constantly ask, do you feel like I give you enough attention? Do you feel cared for? Like, and I have actually taken that into my my current relationship, just like, how are you? Do you feel like I'm supporting you? Am I supporting you enough? Like, can I support you in another way? Like, what does this look like? And that's been huge. I mean, it's kind of a, and it goes back and forth, right? Because I think when one person opens up, it's hard not to like reciprocate that, right? Like if somebody is asking me like, do you feel like I give you X? Like, is there any way that I can change to make you feel more comfortable? Like, if you really care about the person, it's hard not to be like, okay, and how about me? And it just kind of becomes this, hopefully becomes an open door to just like talk about like even just like the emotional side of it, side of a relationship, and then it, I feel like, can become easier to talk about other things too.
Yeah. And that you already spoke to how attractive it was that he was intentional and decisive. I did this poll a long time ago and I just asked like women, what do you find most attractive about men? Men, what do you find the most attractive about women? And unanimously, what women found most attractive in men was just being direct. And then for a lot of men, it kind of was under the scope of being social, like seeing a social woman, right? Introverted or extroverted. Like, so being social can manifest in a bunch of different ways. Like, it's not just being like you can create an environment where people are able to be more social. So someone who's in more introverted may be more creative, put the balloons out, or like be thoughtful in the sense of here are things that we need, right, in order to add to the environment. Or it could be somebody that's just talking to everybody, right? So that was an interesting thing that to see that come up after so many years of since I've done that like poll. All right. Kate, this has been
Yes.
about an hour of our
Yeah.
time together. So I want to just check in and see if there's anything that you want to leave us with, if there's anything you want to clear up from the last episode, the baby reindeer episode.
Okay, first of all, I'm okay. I am okay. No baby reindeer. I mean, I got a spam folder. I got, like everything is okay. I am unable to be found. No, I've got a lot of good support. So like if anybody was really concerned, like it's all good. Like that's history, hopefully now. But I think, you know, I think maybe like taking the idea, and again, I'm not an expert. I'm just somebody who kind of just went through a lot of different things that maybe a lot of people go through and we just don't talk about, like, difficult relationships, and then just kind of entering your well, fuck it era and just doing something that maybe seems off the wall, but like I think maybe if you're feeling kind of stuck, just like try opening the door with communication, just with like little comfortable things like, hey, how are you feeling really? Like, do you feel supported? Like, how can I, is there anything that I can do to make you feel more supported? But I don't know, communication can be really tricky, but and also like if this is a topic that people are interested in and want to hear us talk more about it, like, we can always continue this conversation again at some point.
I do think that this is a much larger conversation to be had,
Yeah.
just especially because the accessibility of like just be non-monogamous, just be polyamorous, and how glamorized it is to have choice. And I was talking to my girlfriend about this too, just like some of the posts people make who kind of make you feel guilty for not being able to deal with the emotions that you can't be non-monogamous, like jealousy, right? If you can't deal with your jealousy, then something's wrong with you, you're broken. And people glamorize what's on the other side of putting themselves through the pain of their partner having a relationship with somebody else, and then they come out on the other side of it and they're like, I've become enlightened, and that's not everybody's experience. And no two experiences are the same, but I think that it's important to offer, right, like more psychologically accessible insights that can get people to that outcome of receiving the communication skills and the ability to support their partners and ask for what they need and give them what they need, or identify if they can't give each other what they need, so that everyone's in more aligned relationships, right? Like even with this, you found yourself an emotionally available man who was emotionally available to other people as well, but you realized for yourself that you wanted that, but you wanted it just with someone who was more aligned, and that's okay. And even this person who you were in a relationship with, he liked you more than he didn't want to get herpes. And this man you're with now likes you more than he didn't want to be non monogamous. So I think that what we can really take away from here is not only the importance of, right, like being able to be with yourself and understanding yourself, but like how important it is for you to identify what aligns for you and then go for that. Because you said yourself like you felt a little bit, you didn't use the word guilty, you mentioned like you hated how something sounded, and it was along the lines of kind of like using this person while you looked for what was more aligned for you. And I think we might see a lot of that. And this is one more thing that contributes to heartbreak. I know that there are people who, in their happy, healthy, monogamous relationships, don't feel able to ask their monogamous partner for something different, something more spicy, right? And this is another reason that the Safe Sex Expo exists, is so that we can give you ideas and introductory language to have these conversations. And at the very least, be able to identify as you go into dating or new relationships, okay, maybe this isn't actually compatible because I can't have these kinds of conversations. Because oftentimes the red flags in the communication are there, and we may just miss it because we're not looking at the compatibilities more so than what's right, what's right there in front of us for like the chemistry. And I wanted to shout out my girlfriend because we were talking about this as well. Like compatibility and chemistry aren't the same thing. And sometimes we mistake one for the other. And the reality is that if we're able to identify the incompatibilities, it kind of negates the chemistry. And if we can acknowledge the chemistry, we can go into and identify where the compatibilities lie. So this is me just kind of summing up the expectation. We know Kate's okay, and there's no baby rain in this situation. So I thank you for coming back onto the podcast and being able to explore that a little bit more. I think that this is going to be more of an ongoing conversation. I don't know what that'll look like because we talked about the herpes thing, and I think there's a lot more people out there who maybe don't have herpes who can speak more to this. So it might be worth it. If you can, if your friend, the guy that you first disclosed to, If you're able, can you connect us? And I'd like to see if he'd be willing to have a conversation.
Sure. Yeah, I'll reach out to him and
Okay,
I'll see.
perfect.
I'll see.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People. Herpes Awareness Day is October 13th. We're doing a panel discussion, documentary showing for the No Shame in This Game film, which we showed at the Herpes Stigma Conference. This is hosted by or produced by one of my board members, Jolene Hernandez. And she just created a film about a handful of people who are living with herpes and navigating stigma. It's about 25 minutes. We'll have a Q&A afterwards, but we'll have a panel and hopefully get some sponsors to participate in some sort of giveaways for us to be able to do and encourage people to just show up, get involved, build community, and see what is here. All you got to do is go to the site, spfpp.org/events, choose the donation option that works best for you, and then we'll follow up with the link to the Herpes Awareness Day event. All right, y'all. And that concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People. Please like, rate, review, share, subscribe to the podcast. Yeah, I thank y'all. Thank y'all for being here. Till next time.